These lights are giving blindness today. What is up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the What Am I Doing podcast with me, your host, Donnie Berry. I honestly cannot believe that we are already at episode 7, which, to be honest, almost didn't happen because I did not feel like recording. Not because I didn't care or I didn't want to, but because I thought I didn't have anything to say. Or more honestly, I did have things to say, but I just didn't want to talk about it while I was kind of in the thick of it. I have been super dysregulated this week. Dysregulated, 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 what you say, dysregulated. I've been doing all of the things, therapy, talking to friends, movement, working out, 12-step, journaling, meditating, and nothing is landing. I feel part of me didn't want to talk about any of that until I was on the other side of it. Because, it's one thing to talk about things on the other side of it with hindsight and to wrap it all up in a pretty poetic bow. But when you're actively struggling, it's messy. And, it's hard to feel like you're enough when you're not performing wellness. I have just woken up every day this week on the wrong side of bed. I don't know what has been going on. It's been like taken so much energy from me to just feel like neutral and to get the day rolling. But it's like any and every little thing has set me off. I was eating a papaya, which, side note, I've been pretty obsessed with papayas ever since I went to Mexico and I came back. Papayas are good as hell. I don't know why I thought for so long that they weren't. They're good. I'm eating a lot of papaya. Anyway, I was eating papaya. I got these new trash bags. I put them in my trash can. They're too small for the trash can. So I put my papaya skins in the trash can. When I was taking the trash out, the papaya skins fell off from out of the bag onto the floor because the bag is too small and it was not containing them in it like I normally like them to. I normally get the big old leaf and lawn trash bags, put it in the kitchen trash can. But I got the ones that actually fit it. But that's why I don't get them, because it actually does not fit it. But they do smell like Fabuloso and I love it. So I'm taking out the trash, flop, the papaya skins fall on the ground and splatter everywhere. And I just wanted to murder somebody. Don't be concerned, I'm not having homicidal ideations, but it's like really sent me through the roof. Similarly, that same day, I was cooking chicken. I was cooking chicken, or it was cooked. I took it out of the microwave. I had it on the plate. And I guess I was just rushing around and bloop, it fell off my plate onto the ground. And I wanted to end it all in that moment. I was so livid. That, of course, is now spilling out into my driving. I hate everyone. Traffic is stupid. Why is there so much traffic? I can't get, I hate living in Koreatown. Just, it's one thing to like be feeling the feelings, but it's like even worse when you're being unreasonable and you're trying to wheel yourself in, but you're just more angry. That's been me for like the last few days. And, I've been talking about it in therapy and I'm like, well, why am I feeling this? And why am I feeling that? And just trying to figure it out. My therapist is like, let's just focus on getting you regulated. Like that's your task for the week. And then she also pointed out how when I'm feeling dysregulated, I kind of want to put the gas on, literally and figuratively speaking. I want to step on the gas to figure more stuff out instead of just taking a beat to regulate myself. What has compounded my dysregulation is that I have felt such a strong pull to reach out for the things that I already know are not helpful for me. Wanting to eat the snacky foods that make me feel not good about myself, wanting to spend money that I shouldn't be spending, wanting to engage in romantic relationships that are probably not helpful. And then the judgment when I do backslide or when I don't make a choice that could be as good for me sparks a whole new deregulation and spiral. So that again reiterates my therapist's point of let's just focus on one day at a time, and let's just focus on getting you regulated and grounded in this moment, because I'm like flailing, trying to reach for all of these things to make me feel better. And I don't know what's worse, not having awareness that I'm doing it or knowing what I'm doing. But I'm only human, and I bleed when I fall down. I am only human. So, sure, all of that makes sense conceptually, intellectually, all the things, but I don't know. I think I have all these things figured out, but when I'm in real life and I'm feeling some type of way and then I have to implement these things that I preach to everyone else, but it's a struggle for me to do it, I'm like, what the hell? I thought I had this figured out. I thought I had this together. What's going on? What am I doing? What's funny is after last week's episode where I was talking about how I was comparing and despairing, a couple of people actually reached out to me on social media and they were like, well, I just want to let you know, like, you're someone that I look to and I think you're smart and funny and I think you have so much money and part of me was like, oh, really? Like, cute. So thank you. You know who you are. And I also kind of love that they thought I had money, but I also don't have money. I mean, I have money. My bills are paid, but I still don't have a job right now. I've purposely been taking this time to sort of heal, and I want to be very intentional. I want to be very strategic with my next job. But honey, the savings account is dropping it low. Shawty had them apple bottom jeans, boots with the fur. My bills are all looking at her. She hit the flow. Next thing you know, my bank account got low. So I'm sure that's contributing to my dysregulation. You know, the looming, what are you going to do for a job? You got to get another job. You have bills to pay. And part of me just wants to be like, ugh, I don't care. I'll be homeless. But then another part of me is like, no, I want Erewhon and massages and nice things. I got to see in real time how I still very much want to have it all figured out. And I still do operate believing that I have it all figured out. And I don't. I'm so human and I struggle. I struggle a lot. And I think part of me doesn't like to admit that. I think part of me still wants to feel like, oh, yeah, but no, I used to struggle, but I'm over here now and I have it all figured out. Or even if like I'm struggling, it's still like a curated, I have it under control type of struggle, you know? I mean, I'm fine. I don't want everyone worrying about me, but sometimes it's hard to be human. You know, you're watching me in real time not have it all figured out. And so if me not having it figured out brings you some comfort, great. If me not having it figured out also makes you go, oh, I'm not quite that bad. I'm fine. Then great. It's a win-win all the way around. All of that to say that this week has very much been in alignment with Mental Health Awareness Month. Anyway, I digress. In honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, I am continuing this series of conversations with people who hold space for other people and talk to them about how they hold space for themselves. This week, I am joined by my friend Remy Uhler. Remy is a full-time therapist and the CEO and founder of Bloom Anew You, which is a jewelry line based in healing, and is also the CEO and founder of Olivia's Healing Paws, which is a nonprofit that does a lot of grief advocacy work, especially around pet loss. Remy and I go way back. I first met her when we were both in our child acting era. Back in Ocala, Florida, we had a manager. There was a talent search at the local mall. Back then it was called the Paddock Mall. I showed up and I sang At Last by Etta James. And I didn't win, but I did get called later by this manager. And she was like, oh, you were so great. But have you ever thought about acting? A little bit scammy. And I'm like, well, maybe. And she's like, great. I have these acting classes. Let me sign you up. And my mom was like, okay, let's, no, we were poor, you know? So this manager was like, okay, listen, forget the acting classes. I will sponsor you. Just come. So I started training with her. She was also an acting coach. And yeah, after months, she flew in some managers from LA and we had a little talent showcase. And then they selected myself and a couple other kids to come out to LA. And that really kind of started my journey into the acting world. I went out first with my manager and I met with like casting directors. I met with Disney. I met with Nickelodeon. I met with Spelling Productions. And at that age, I started to have like a lot of buzz around me. And I was like, oh my God. I'm about to be famous and rich. Obviously, that didn't happen. But what did happen is that this manager would bring myself and a group of her other students out to LA for pilot season, which is like January to May. And it's when there's a lot of pilots. So it's typically a very busy time for actors. And so I'd be in LA with this group of kids. So myself and Remy would come out here with our acting coach / manager who acted as our den mother. And it would kind of be like the real world, but for kids. There would be 6 or 8 of us living in this little 2-bedroom apartment somewhere in LA. And we'd be out there living our LA dreams, up to shenanigans, getting in fights, getting into trouble. I mean, we weren't ratchet and rowdy, but we were good kids. But as you can imagine, a bunch of preteens living in a house with not a lot of adult supervision, we got into shenanigans. Anyway, since then, obviously a lot has changed, not only in my personal life, but also in Remy's life. We reconnected over the podcast. And to my surprise, when I reached out to her and I talked to her, I saw that she is now a mental health professional, which might actually speak to our adolescent experiences being in LA. She is a full-time therapist now, and part of what drew me to her work and her story was that it involved, like so many of ours, major loss. And not just some big dramatic loss, but what some people dismiss or don't understand, like losing a pet. And ironically, it was perfect timing because I had just seen a story that was talking about how there's research that shows that grief from losing a pet can be just as intense as losing a close family member. So if you've ever felt silly or dramatic after the loss of your beloved pet, this is definitely for you. It's real, it's valid, and it can shift your whole trajectory like it did for Remy. In this conversation, we talk about what Remy sees most during her work as a therapist, what therapy actually looks like in real life, and how to find a therapist that's probably a good fit for you. She also opens up about the loss of her beloved dog, Olivia, and how that experience inspired a whole new chapter of advocacy for her. I'll be honest, I've never really had a super close pet, and after hearing Remy's story, I don't actually know that I want one now. That's actually been my hesitancy to get a pet for a long time because I have seen so many of my close friends devastated after the loss of a pet. It really got me thinking about the ways that we hold grief and how healing oftentimes starts in the most unexpected places. So without further ado, let's get into my conversation with Remy Uhler. Hey everyone, I am so excited about today's guest. We have Remy Uhler. Hey Remy.
Hi Donnie, so good to see you.
Dude, thank you so much for doing this. Remy and I go way back. We actually started acting together in our kid days. We had a manager. We were both in Florida. We started acting, and then this manager would take a big group of us, and by big I mean like what, 5 to 8, a group of us, take us out to California, kind of be like the real world but for kids.
That's a very good way to describe it.
I always remember us getting into shenanigans. Remy was the youngest of the group, so I feel like myself and the other kids always dragged her along for the ride. What do you remember about those days?
It was thrilling, it was exciting, laughing so much, really getting a diverse music experience at 10, 12. I think like Lil' Kim.
Yes! Yes.
And then I have a little surprise for you.
OMG! Wait, I'm even wearing the same color shirt. Me with hairs. Oh, rest in peace to the hair days. Oh my God, that's hilarious. Yeah, that was circa what, 2003? One year was 2003, and then we came out the next year in 2004. I think I was 14 one year and then 15 the next.
I think I was like 10 or 12.
Out there in the wilderness with no parents and a manager who was like our den mother.
Mostly with you and a couple of the older kids and no adult supervision. I mean, what could go wrong in the hills of California?
Absolutely nothing.
Also, we need to orient the people. This was before iPhones with GPS. You had to print on I forget what, I didn't do it because I was too young, but you had to print directions and no east to west.
I completely forgot. Yeah, we used to use MapQuest. And one of the kids in the house had a car, and so she would drive us all around. And then I'd be like the navigator with all the MapQuest directions. And we'd have to, the night before, like get on the computer before we had Wi Fi and like type in all the addresses. And I remember stacks of paper of like, okay, we did this audition. Okay, next place we're going. It says turn left, and forget if you like made a wrong turn. You'd have to like go around and start back over. I know, I'm sure our parents and people who are older than us are like, oh yeah, but we had Thomas guides. Well, cheers to y'all, because I cannot imagine. So Remy and I actually reconnected because she was watching the podcast, and then after years of losing touch, we got reconnected. And Remy, it's been just so cool to plug back into your life and see that you've blossomed into this grounded, compassionate mental health professional. And I thought you'd be such a special guest to have on, especially during Mental Health Awareness Month. Can you tell the people a little about yourself? What are 3 words you would use to describe yourself?
Resilient, curious, and authentic to a fault, possibly.
I love that. We love authenticity.
Brene Brown said it very well that if we're not being our authentic selves, then we're like hustling. We're showing people what they expect to see out of us. And if we feel like people don't know us well enough or that we don't have that connection, it's because we're not being our true self.
So, Remy, tell us a little about your journey, where you're from, what led you here, and how you found your voice.
I was born in Montana, moved to Florida, back to Montana, back to Florida, been here since 2007-ish, went to UCF, got my bachelor's, and then experienced some depression in my early 20s, I'd say, and took a break from school while I figured out my mental health. That was vitally important to me. All the while being a performer, 10 years at Disney, got the mental health reeled back in, and then I pursued my master's in social work, and now I'm a full-time therapist.
So you were a performer at Disney?
Yes, 10 years.
What is one performer secret about Disney that somebody would not expect?
Everything? You know, we are so indoctrinated that even if I reveal something, it's like, strike me down. Walt will roll over in whatever that frozen thing is under the Magic Kingdom or whatnot. There we go. There are tunnels under Magic Kingdom. It's called the Utilidor.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Now, out here in LA, Disney adults, it's like a whole thing.
Yeah, I actually don't understand it fully. I think with everything, there is a very healthy and unhealthy spectrum. There are adults that do go to Disney, and it's really great. There are some that lean into the unhealthier side that will stalk performers and be at your every set and know the times you're coming and going and wait for you backstage. So yeah, there's a real thing with Disney adults, but the haters need to calm down because it's not just for kids. Actually, there's more adult things to do sometimes than I think than kids.
Remy, can you share a moment in your clinical or your personal journey when you felt unsure? Like, what am I doing? What was your what am I doing moment?
Like, how many times in the day? Everybody, I think, day to day is like, what am I doing? We're all kind of just doing our best. I'm going to take you back to the most recent time where I was sitting on my couch. I do therapy in school, and I was like, what am I doing? I missed Olivia and I just started to cry. And I was on Instagram, which I don't even get to be on social media unless I'm posting for the business or nonprofit. But I happened to see your reel for your first episode of What Am I Doing? And I'm like, how did you know my thoughts in that moment? Before I lost Olivia, I never cried outside of my bedroom. Like, they didn't work. And when she passed, I have now cried going to the mailbox, down grocery aisles. I'm like, pull it together. But then as the therapist, I'm like, let it all out. But yeah, so sitting there on the couch crying, I'm still questioning what am I doing and who am I with all I have.
Yeah, you're definitely not alone. So, as a mental health professional, what do you see people struggling with the most lately?
I feel like what people are experiencing the most is we're in like a loneliness epidemic. I think this is very important. It's important for people to understand the difference between active suicide ideation and passive suicide ideations. Passive suicide ideations are not anything to hold lightly, but people can express that they have thoughts of I don't want to be here, like life's tough right now, what if I wasn't here? But when it goes into plans, mean, intent, and time, that's where if someone is talking about that, even if it's a child or a friend is expressing like I've had thoughts that I don't want to wake up, ask them questions. Research shows that if you ask a question, you're not going to make them want to do it anymore. It's actually more beneficial to ask the questions. If someone is expressing that, those are 4 things to look out for, and that's either they need to go to a hospital and get attention immediately, or maybe if it's not plans, mean, intent, or time, that's where you would recommend seeing a therapist. It's not talked about enough. I work currently with adolescents, specifically high schoolers right now, and I think it stems significantly from attachment. And the way I'm trained is there are attachment wounds and trauma wounds. And trauma wounds are the things that happen to us. It could be physical abuse, it could be a hurricane like taking our house down, or like a house fire, stuff like that. And attachment wounds are the needs that we should have met as children, usually by our caregivers that let us know that we're safe, display the type of emotional regulation, are attuned with our emotions. And a lot of what I see is, I don't want to say generational trauma, but I think it's just generational passing down what I've seen and I've learned, and I just don't know any other way.
What is one misconception about mental health that you'd love to clear up?
A lot, actually. I wish that therapy wasn't stigmatized. I know we feel like it's been destigmatized a lot, but there are still people who feel like going to therapy is a weakness for some reason. And yeah, I also wish that there was more psychoeducation for people who are seeking mental health services and understanding the difference between a therapist who doesn't prescribe medication, that would be a psychiatrist, and a psychologist who does the clinical testing to diagnose certain mental health disorders, but also any learning disabilities, things like that. They can do talk therapy, but they don't do talk therapy as much. And talk therapy is usually where you find your therapists. I was working in outpatient therapy. Sometimes people can wait 2 weeks to get to that appointment only to be told, I'm not the right professional, go seek out this person. If you're needing medication, psychiatrists can be 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I never want a client to be delayed in appropriate and quality care just because they aren't sure what professional does what.
Yeah, as I've shared on here, my mental health journey really started once I got into recovery. And only then was I open to seeing a therapist once I learned the concept of self-help and getting into these programs and spaces where mental health and how I'm feeling and what I'm thinking is really talked about openly and honestly. But I still have a lot of family and friends, much like I was before I started going, that was like, oh yeah, that's cute for you, but I don't need to go, you know? And I think everyone needs to go. I think that if we continue destigmatizing it, we can look at therapy, seeing a psychologist, seeing a psychiatrist if need be, is really kind of like brain health. You know, we go to a cardiologist, we go to our a general
Practice doctor?
thank you. Yes, our general practice doctor. And, you know, we should also be seeing mental health professionals. What would be your clinical advice to someone on when they should see a therapist, or maybe sort of how that could manifest in their life if they might need to start to seek additional support?
It's a really good question. I feel like if they're having problems in their life, really like, are you able to manage? Are you able to govern your feelings? And are you reactive towards other people and their emotions? And are you able to regulate how you're feeling for the most part? When we're out of our window of tolerance, our emotions are escalated and we can get into anger. That's when our feelings take over. And that's when I'd suggest for people to be like, maybe therapy might be a good idea. Actually, common misconception. I even had this misconception until I was in my master's degree. Therapists aren't supposed to give advice. Therapists around might be cringing, but I'd seen my own therapist for years. A lot of therapists don't agree with long-term therapy. I've had my therapist for like 10 years, but people with compound PTSD find it the most beneficial to have that person that they can check in, not all the time, but when different life things come up.
What is compound PTSD?
I love that you're asking these questions. Compound PTSD is not in the DSM. The DSM is the book that has every diagnosis for mental health in it. So, PTSD is post traumatic stress disorder. You've had an event in your life that your brain basically has recorded and stuck it in your brain, and you don't know when you're in that moment. PTSD is often associated with wartime. So, like at Disney, when fireworks are going off, vets who have been in combat might have a PTSD flashback, and their brain is like, you need to duck and cover. I'm not a military person, so I apologize if I really oversimplified that, but they'll think they're back in combat. Compound PTSD is CPTSD. It could be small or big T traumas. It's more of the attachment wounds that have happened over time. And our brains work with the wounded inner child. I could be my 33-year-old adult self, but if someone triggers me back to a time where I was wounded as a child or I didn't feel safe, my needs weren't met, I will then start reacting as that 12-year-old self or 5-year-old self. And that's where we can see a lot of people have those type of almost adult temper tantrums.
I guess circling back to that, what is a therapist? What is the job of a therapist? What is the role of a therapist, and what are they supposed to do?
Excellent question again. Thank you for letting me geek out. We don't give advice. Clients come in, have conversations with us, talk about areas in their life that they want to improve. And we are trained in certain modalities. When you're seeking therapy services, it's really important to know what the therapist is trained in, or what they specialize in, or what kind of population they've worked with the most. I really advocate for clients to know when they're looking for a therapist, trying to identify that they have the qualifications that they need. Therapists have so many different things that they can do and treat. If I had a client come to me for an eating disorder, I would refer them out, because that is not anything that I've worked with before. It is not any territory that I would really even go down with a client until I had a specific training to be more qualified to work with that specific population. As a therapist, I really think clients, I hope they understand that just because it's said one time in session doesn't mean you're going to leave that door and execute the skill that you talked about perfectly from then on out. Every skill takes practice. You didn't learn to walk in a day. You're not going to learn how to use therapeutic skills perfectly just because you and a therapist talk about it. Therapy is 1 hour a week. The time in between those sessions are really the time to hone in and see what works and what doesn't. And what doesn't work, you meet with your therapist the following week and say, this didn't work. and you can collaborate and brainstorm to find things that work better while practicing the skills. And the hope is that our emotions don't control us in time. I don't have my anger outbursts, few and far in between. But it takes skill, and be patient with yourself.
I love that. I don't want to wait. I want to learn the thing, cognitively get it, and then be like, okay, it's all fixed. It's that returning to it and letting it breathe and implementing it that, that's part of my own journey.
We don't like to be in the uncomfortable. I'm here to fix this problem. So, like, we talk about it, done deal. But life isn't like that. And we have to learn to live in the uncomfortable. It's hard for me too, but I think it's really important. I work with teenagers. I also work with their parents. I feel like this is important for any person seeking mental health services. I never want a family to leave my session and reflect back and be like, I'm a bad parent because I did X, Y, and Z, or I'm a bad kid because X, Y, and Z. There is no blame, there is no shame in my sessions. I always say, I don't want you to be in the car and think that this session was to point out where everybody is doing things wrong. I'm just happy when people show up for either themselves or their family members and want to improve whatever problems that are existing within the family system or within themselves. And not blaming yourself, I think, is very important to make sure that the therapy process works and you're not stuck in that thought process of those cognitive distortions of those labels that society puts on us.
One of the things that came up for me in therapy is the guilt I have in processing some of the negative feelings I have about my mom, especially because she's gone. There is a resistance and there is discomfort in admitting that there's some unpleasant feelings there about my mom, which can make the healing difficult, you know? What would be your clinical take when people start to have these feelings of, oh, I have this loved one that I've lost, but I also am starting to feel maybe a little resentment, or I feel a little angry, or I feel this thing that I feel so guilty feeling towards this loved one?
Absolutely. Guilt is part of the grief process. Just because your loved one has passed doesn't mean that the problems go away once they pass. So there is more layers to what needs to be worked out, but validating that just because they're gone doesn't mean I wasn't hurt or I wish I didn't do something better. I also talk about the should haves. Like, should haves don't help, especially with decision making. How is that going to help me in my present day? I think it's very important for grief too. Understanding that you made the best decisions with everything that you knew at that time. We all grow and learn and maybe wouldn't make the same decisions that we did in the past, but understand just because you have that knowledge today doesn't mean that you can go back and fix anything. They have passed, but I can still be angry at them, or I wish I would have expressed my love in this way. If your loved ones are still with you, have that conversation with them. Write them a letter. If you feel like you didn't say I love you and they might have passed and that it wasn't expressed, tell them now.
So switching gears a bit, you are the founder of a nonprofit called Olivia's Healing Paws. And through that nonprofit, grief seems to be at the heart of your work. Can you tell us more about that journey, who Olivia is, how losing Olivia impacted you, and how it ultimately inspired your nonprofit?
That's my other favorite topic that I can talk hours about. Olivia is my beloved dog, soulmate, companion, lifesaver. She was my strength and stay, to quote Queen Elizabeth II, and she passed away 7 days before my commencement ceremony. She got me through the thick of it. In my 20s, she would go to therapy with me. Things that a dog or an animal can teach you that other humans can't. Unconditional love, unconditional positive regard. What got me started on this grief route wasn't anything I planned as a therapist. I thought I was going to do other things, but I left that night on December 8th, adamant that she was coming home with me. And when I got to the vet, I realized that that was not a reality. And when I got home, I looked at the bed that I just got out of with her and was like, I cannot get back in bed and put that TV show on and act like the most devastating thing of my life didn't just occur 30 minutes ago. So at this point, I had some friends that had their degrees in therapy, therapists, and I started texting literally anyone who I had texted in the recent weeks. I was like, what do I do? I don't know what to do. I didn't even know if I should take my clothes off because I was so scared that I'd lose her scent. And over, from professionals to non-professionals, I got the same things. And it was that everyone grieves differently and there's no right way to grieve. And I'm like, I literally don't even know what to do. I didn't even know if I should get back in bed or take my clothes off. So I made this Facebook post, and my friend who's a photographer said that there is a morning candle from her religion that she knows of. And I also have a niche passion for European royal families, and the Queen had died prior, and so did Prince Philip. So I woke up the next morning and I got up and I was like, what do I do? Still don't know. And I said, okay, well, the royals mourn for 7 days. But I was like, perfect, I'm gonna do that. So I decided I was gonna mourn for 7 days. And then my friend was like, I think there's a candle that is lit for 7 days. And I was like, oh my gosh, 7 days. Wonderful. I'm mourning for 7 days. Called Publix and they're like, yeah, we have it. I'm like, how do they have this? So I got my candles. I got home and I lit the candle and I found out it was a 24-hour candle. So then I used matches and I would transfer the fire from one candle to another for the next 7 days. And that is actually what started my nonprofit. 3 weeks later, I started my career as a therapist, and my first 4 referrals were for grief. And I went to my boss and I was like, I'm not even skilled. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And she was like, you're fine. And I blindly walked my way through grief through 2024. And I was like, I can't be the only one. And I never wanted someone to experience what I did. So I got together some boxes and I put all the things that really helped me and donated them to Olivia's vet. So a little bit about my grief experience and why each item is in the box. A candle, and then this note card since I started the business, and then a rainbow bridge bracelet, and then I also include a pen for the journal, and then a heat-resistant candle plate, matches, heartstone for sensory. But I made sure that every item that was in this box wasn't something that someone needed to retrieve from their house to utilize it, because the last thing someone needs at that time is to be like, oh my gosh, my pens just ran out, or I just used my last match 2 weeks ago. So it was very important to me that everything that was in the box, all the tools were in there. So I knew that grief wasn't only limited to pets. So I have 2 versions, the ones with pets, and then for humans. When I was working as a therapist and really working with people and their emotions while having to put mine to the back, I would look down at my bracelet and know that while I was still trying to process, having this bracelet on was an anchor for my grief, my sadness, and my feelings until I could step away in the session and cry, or, just regulate myself. And the bracelet was vital in the first few months. Also, the candles to this day, I light them for great things like successes. I light it when I need her. I still use a candle to this day as a way to help me navigate my grief. And then journals, obviously, I think journaling is very important. I always thought from the start that if the person who gets this box, I don't care if one thing is used and the rest is thrown away. At least they had something to help them start. There's no right way to grieve. Everyone does grieve differently, but that doesn't mean that people know how to do it. So I gave them actual items that could help them through that process if they've never experienced it.
I love that. So Olivia was this incredibly special force in your life that just means the world to you, that has gotten you through so much. You have this tragic, traumatic event happen, and so you literally funneled all of that into a nonprofit to help other people.
Yes, I put together the boxes myself, and I never made a bracelet prior to June last year, and that's how I actually accidentally opened up a business because in my brain I gave him to the vet and it seemed to be successful. Like they were helpful, and I was like, how do I continue this? Like I surely can't afford this for the rest of my life, but I'm very passionate that they are tools people need. So it was actually this bracelet here that I made, and I was like, maybe I'll sell a bracelet. And then I knew that not only people mourn pets, but humans. So I wanted ones for humans as well. And then realized that I would also need people to continue buying. So I was like, I need to go into everyday type of bracelets. And in 6 weeks, I had 30 plus bracelets. I also had a collection because my business opened August 28th for Rainbow Bridge Remembrance Day, and then National Grief Awareness Day is August 31st, and then September is Suicide Prevention Month. So I had a suicide prevention collection as well, which actually jump-started my mental health bracelets.
So you started the nonprofit, then with the products that you were making in conjunction with your nonprofit, you made a business from that to fund the nonprofit.
Yeah, I didn't know it was going to be a business when I was like, let me sell a bracelet. But yeah, I accidentally started my business to fund my nonprofit, and all of the money that was made, I could continue giving back and donating these comfort boxes.
Nice. Can people buy these comfort boxes for their loved ones?
Yes, when I did my first in-person vending event, they asked to buy them, and I really saw a need for a grander scale. So yes, they are available on my website. I did decide to keep the cost down to what the box costs to make. I do have an option to donate, which is helpful, but it's such a huge help when people buy from the company as well. And that will be the continued source of funding to have this go for as many years as it needs to forever, is what I hope.
So why is grief work so important, and why do you think it's so often overlooked?
Because no one wants to talk about death. I don't know if it's overlooked. I think people are more scared to talk about it. I think it's to our detriment. I'm so passionate about it because I experienced it and I didn't know what to do. And I grew up in a household where my mom had been sick my whole life and it wasn't a taboo topic. There's so much stuff that happens legally when a human passes away. I had a hard time managing the emotional component, let alone all the stuff that happens legally after. Not talking about things is more a detriment than staying silent.
I think, unfortunately, for so many people, we don't learn until it happens to us. To the people that are open and receptive to it, if there's things that we can do to lovingly suggest and recommend, here's what I had to learn and deal with. Hopefully, it doesn't have to be that way for you. But yeah, I love that you touch on that. The emotional stuff is there, whether we want to deal with it or not. We might, if we're lucky, be able to put it on the back burner enough to go into administrative roles. But I love that you've curated this box to really help people start to deal with the emotional side of things.
No matter what, when someone experiences loss, if it's a pet or a loved one, there are not words that will do anything. And where the words fall short, the boxes say everything. They're not there to take away the pain, they're there to help cushion it and guide you through it.
In a world that pressures us to move on, how do you help people move through grief instead?
I think a lot of people wonder, how can we help a person who is grieving? Just say, hey, if you want to share a memory, I'd be more than happy to listen. If you want to talk about them, please feel free. And you don't have to ask questions. Just say, I'm there for you if you ever have something that you want to talk about. You don't have to pretend. Olivia taught me life doesn't end in death. It continues on, and we just have to learn how our loved ones are showing up for us in a different way than in their physical self. I always say me and Olivia are nothing special. She's just a dog. I'm just a girl. There's nothing special about us. She shows up for me almost daily in the most wild ways through flowers. Your loved one is too, if you're open to that. You just gotta see the ways that those connections continue on in a different capacity than through speaking or being physically there with you. The grief bracelet that I put in my box was a profound lesson that we can wear items that can remind us of an intention. I go to my wardrobe and look at my jewelry and I'm like, what do I need today? Today I have my ebb and flow bracelet because when I experienced depression, feelings didn't ebb and flow. Now they do. So I really ground myself with my jewelry. I know that there's an afterlife and I know she's still with me, and that helps me the most.
What do you think are some practical ways people can support someone who's grieving?
By talking with them, by just saying, hey, if you ever want to talk about this person or your pet, I'm more than happy to listen. Don't feel like because they have passed, everything about them has to die with them as well. Grief does look different for everyone, so some people will want to talk, some people won't. But just putting it out there, saying, I'm here for you, asking them, what ways can I best support you through this?
Is there a caveat that the person saying that needs to make sure they are regulated and they have the space to hold space for this person prior to saying that?
That is so fantastic to throw in there. Yeah, definitely. You have to know where you're at emotionally and what you're able to give them, because if you're dysregulated and then you like blow up, you have to be healthy for yourself to be able to sit and help people through hard times.
No, that's right. Period. Okay, Remy, so please tell the people where they can find you, where they can connect with you, where they can stay up to date on any and everything you're working on.
You can find me on my Instagram at Remy Kirtley. We also have an Instagram for Olivia's Healing Paws and a separate one for Bloom Anew You. My website is oliviashealingpaws.com, and we also have a Facebook. The nonprofit and business are together for the moment, and that is Bloom Anew You with Olivia's Healing Paws. And on our website, as of this weekend, you can go to oliviashealingpaws.com, and on the navigation bar, go to mental health resources, and you can find user-friendly guides that will help you find the appropriate care when seeking out mental health therapy.
Nice. Okay, cool. So it's a one-stop shop for all things mental health. Remy, thank you so much for joining us for this amazing conversation. Thank you for all of the incredible work you're doing with Olivia's Healing Paws. I think those grief boxes and bracelets are just a beautiful way for you to turn that grief into something really magical and special. And I think it's going to be inspirational for people when dealing with their own grief. And I think it's going to provide them tangible tools for dealing with grief and hopefully maybe even supporting their loved ones with their grief. So thank you so much. It was so great to catch up with you, and I appreciate you stopping by the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I love to talk about this stuff, and I've enjoyed my time.
Yay. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. Big thank you again to Remy for coming on and sharing so openly and so honestly, not just as a therapist, but as a human being navigating her own grief, her own loss, her own growth, and her own healing. If anything she said resonated with you, please let me know. I love to hear what lands with you all, what doesn't land with you all. As always, thank you so much for listening and supporting and continuing to be a part of this little community that we've built. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, share, subscribe, send it to all the homies, the friends, the family. Like, comment, interact, because maybe if I get lucky, I don't have to get a real job. I can just do this and I'll somehow make money from it. As always, I have a website, so please feel free to check it out. It's www.donnieberry.com. That is www.donnieberry.com. There you can find links to all the things, all of my socials. You can find links to all of the ways to listen and watch this podcast. And if you scroll down to the bottom, there is a section titled Hit Me Up where you can send me a little message. Alrighty, that's it for this week's episode. As always, sending you light, love, and very good vibes. That's cute, right? That's like my official outro. See you next time.